Fried chicken, Forrest Gump, and rabies are all on this day. Welcome back to On This Day. Today's date is July 6, 2022. It is the 187th day of the year. You got 178 days left. It is the 27th Wednesday in the 28th week and the 16th day of summer. If today's your birthday, it's still a Cancer. Today is National Fried Chicken Day. In the United States, July 6th, chicken lovers across the country recognize National Fried Chicken Day by feasting at nearby restaurants, homes, and outdoor picnics on chicken, deep fried, whatever you want to do. Scottish immigrants brought their tradition of deep frying chicken in fat to the southern United States. After its introduction to the American South, fried chicken soon became a staple pretty much throughout the country. Jay Leno had this older woman, she was like 100 years old, and she was giving advice on life and marriage and all that, and one of her pieces of advice was, never marry a woman that doesn't cook good fried chicken. But back to the Scottish people and their chicken. When they brought it here, they really didn't put much spices in it or anything like that. It wasn't until it got into the South that they started adding spices to it. All right, let's see what else July 6th has given us. 1560, the Treaty of Edinburgh is signed by Scotland and England. This was about 200 years after William Wallace basically chased most of the English military out of Scotland. 1854, in Jackson, Michigan, the first convention of the United States Republican Party is held. 1885, Louis Pasteur successfully tests his vaccine against rabies on Joseph Meister, a boy who was bitten by a rabid dog. If you ever want to find some interesting stuff to read about Louis Pasteur. He was, first of all, he's French, and he's the father of microbiology, basically, and without microbiology, we'd still have pretty serious infections that killed people on a daily basis, along with other problems we have. What's really strange is he started off as a subpar student. His father was a sergeant in the Napoleonic War for France, and he encouraged his son to follow his passions, and his passions were art and sketching and things like that. His drawings and sketches had taken up so much of his time, he'd fallen way behind in school and had to get tutoring when he finally got to the university. Basically, the world owes a subpar student quite a lot. 1892, 3,800 striking steelworkers engage in a day-long battle with Pinkerton agents during the Homestead strike, leaving 10 dead and dozens wounded. So back around 1890, there was a struggling steel mill called the Homestead Steel Mill, just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Andrew Carnegie, millionaire, billionaire, whatever he was, and owner of Carnegie Steel, takes over the plant, retools it, and gets it ready to go. It is the largest plant on the planet at the time, and it was ready to turn out more industrial strength steel than any other place in the world. Basically, the Homestead Steel Works was kind of a modern marvel. Well, Carnegie had poured millions into this plant and wanted to see some profits, so he started cutting corners. Fewer workers, less pay. He actually started cutting people's pay, which these days they know that's like one of the worst things you can do as a company. Well, he did it. And there were some grumblings. Carnegie at the time was trying to rebuild his image, so he had a guy named Henry Frick take charge of the plant to make sure it was profitable. And this guy cut even more corners. A lot of the workers were spending more than half of their life in this steel plant. 12, 13-hour shifts, 7 days a week. Well, a small group of steelworkers take their concerns to Henry Frick, and he just kind of blows them off, but he realizes he may have a problem and there may be a strike, so what he does is push them harder so he could have more steel in case there is a strike. Thinking if they do have a strike, it's like a week long or whatever, and if he's got a good stockpile, he really doesn't have to worry about it. So as a few deaths and a lot of injuries pile up, Frick takes a harsher stance. He puts up notices saying that Carnegie Steel will not negotiate with anyone striking. And he also underlines that conditions will not be getting better. Basically, I know you're complaining, I know it's dangerous, but I don't care. Get back to work. Well, that was the final straw, and they voted to strike. Steel workers basically used steel to barricade the front of the steel plant to stop Frick from bringing in scab workers. Well, Frick, not knowing when to back down, he calls in the Pinkertons. The Pinkertons, at the time, were the largest private police force in the world. They were mercenaries. The Pinkertons show up, and Frick orders them to tear down the barricade and chase the workers off. And the workers respond by throwing rocks at them. Frick gives the order, and the Pinkertons open fire on them. When the shooting stops, 9 Carnegie Steel workers have been killed, while countless others sustain severe injuries. Here's the best part. That didn't stop the steel workers. years. They held their ground. Eventually, the Pennsylvania governor had to call in the state militia, basically the precursor of the National Guard, and they took the plant back over. 1942, Anne Frank and her family go into hiding in the secret annex above her father's office in an Amsterdam warehouse. 1944, Jackie Robinson refuses to move to the back of a bus, leading to a court-martial. 1957, John Lennon and Paul McCartney meet for the first time as teenagers, 3 years before forming the Beatles. 1988, the Piper Alpha drilling platform in the North Sea is destroyed by an explosion and fires. 177 oil workers are killed, making it the world's worst offshore oil disaster in terms of direct loss of life. 1996, a McDonnell Douglas MD-88 operating as Delta Airlines Flight 1288 experiences a turbine engine failure during takeoff from Pensacola International Airport, killing 2 and injuring 5 of the 147 people on board. Movies released on July 6, 1994. One of the greatest movies of all time, Forrest Gump. Robert Zemeckis directed the film about a mentally challenged man who accidentally had a hand in major moments in history. The movie won 6 Oscars, one of Tom Hanks' best roles. Jim Hanks, Tom's younger brother, doubled for Tom during numerous running sequences. He ran everywhere in the movie if you've never seen it. If you've never seen it, I'd like to welcome you out of your coma. Such a good movie. It had, like I said, Tom Hanks, Sally Fields, Robin Wright, Gary Sinise, Haley Joel Osment, and McKelty Williamson, who played Bubba, his buddy. I think that's how you pronounce his first name. I could be wrong. Born on July 6, 1946, George W. Bush, the 43rd president of the United States, who narrowly defeated Al Gore in the 2000 election despite losing the popular vote, then won re-election against John Kerry in 2004. The tragic September 11th terrorist attacks occurred just 8 months into his first presidential term, and in response, he called for a war on terror, which ultimately led to the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. He was a baseball player and head cheerleader at boarding school. He studied at Yale University before obtaining his MBA from Harvard. He served as the governor of Texas from 1995 to 2000. Died on July 6. 2009, we lost Robert McNamara. He was the Secretary of Defense under President John F. Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson, and he basically presided over America's entry into the Vietnam War. He is a very interesting man. There's a documentary where they talk to him called The Fog of War, and he explains a lot of different things. It was very, very interesting. I think I talked about it on his birthday one time, but definitely he's an interesting guy, and if you ever get a chance, watch The Fog of War. It was done in 2003. He was a registered Republican until 1978, and then he decided he wanted to be a Democrat. Robert McNamara died at his home in Washington, D.C. at 5:30 a.m. on July 6, 2009, at the age of 93. He is buried at Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia, with the grave marker also commemorating his wife's, both of them. That's interesting. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a productive day, and be nice to each other.